Open up to Psalm 35. Last week, we spent a lot of time in Isaiah 66. Remember, the basis of the beginning of, or the context of the beginning of Isaiah 66, it was talking about a nation being born in one day. He says, who has heard of such a thing? And we went through that whole portion of Isaiah 66. And the point is this, and again, I'm just touching this base as we move forward. The reemergence of Israel as a nation is something, as far as the timeline of God goes, the timeline of salvation, the timeline of the whole process. Just as it said that Jesus came at just the right time, whatever that is, we know it's that way. And God being the master of time is, as we've discussed in this class, a very important factor in this creation. Time is a key physical property of this creation, and for good reason. And so what I'm equating here is that if God knew that Jesus was coming at a certain time, and it's the single most important event throughout all eternity, right? A very, very close event as far as the timeline and prophecy goes is Israel being dispersed among the nations and then coming back in her land. And so the thrust here is that if the Psalms have any prophetic value at all, and among other things, it's going to be talking about that. We saw that in Isaiah. It's peppered throughout the Bible that Israel will become a nation. So again, just to wrap up here, our thrust in the Psalms, and I want you to keep focused on this, is an extension to what you already know of the book of Psalms. It's a wonderful prayer book. It's a wonderful heart book. But we also showed that the book maps into the first 5 books of the Pentateuch, Genesis to Deuteronomy, in its structure. It actually fleshes those books out a little more. But from the standpoint of God's feelings, of his deeper inner thoughts, I showed that to you about applying that thrust of the Psalms to Jesus himself when he was hanging on the cross, right? We also saw that, and I hope you saw this, and this is where we're continuing forward here. This is a little bit of a heartfelt book of Israel's pain. Israel's pain, and as she is being beaten, as she is being slaughtered, as she is being judged, and yet it also shows her loving the fact that there is restitution, that God has always planned and has in fact brought her home, and there's more to come. And we're seeing these lights. So we're seeing these lights in Psalms, and that's what I'm trying to show you, and that's what we're going to wrap up here with today. I said to you last week, actually for the last 3 weeks. That's right. See, track me on that. See, how long has it taken to go through this Psalm? That we were going to wrap up showing. Again, it's me. It's my belief that the Psalms track Israel as she's being prepared to come back to the land. Remember, World War I prepared a land for the people. World War II was a very pointed way, a very hard way of preparing a people for the land. So why wouldn't Scripture talk about that? And if the Psalms do track Israel's feelings and her thoughts and her pain and her thankfulness in the good times and in the anticipation of God restoring her, I think you'll see it. We talked about the Psalms being the 19th book from the Old Testament, and I showed you Psalm 48. Remember what Psalm 48 says? It's glorying over Zion. It's a very happy psalm, which is one of the few happy psalms. We're going to see another couple of happy psalms, joyful psalms. And they're tied to joyful events in Israel's history, the modern day history. And I just want to show you that, and it's up to you whether you see that or not. Okay, I won't yell at you this time. But next time I'm going to have him do it. Yeah, you do that. You show who's boss. See how good that works for you. That's why I'm leaving that up to you. I ain't going to do it. See, now I got to edit this out of the recording. Can you imagine this going viral? Hey, I'm a Christian. Show her who's boss. All right. So we are going to go through some of the detail of how time marched up in the 30s into Hitler coming to power and Germany being consumed by this man, and then the rest of the world starting to be consumed by this man. And you're going to see, hopefully, that the Psalms 35, 36, 37, 38, we're not going to go through every single one of them. But if Psalm 48, which was what we read last week, and actually the week before that, is this joyful psalm about Zion, and look at her citadels, and look at her glory. At the end of World War II, when Israel was saved by the Allied forces, and by the way, the United States leading those Allied forces, why wouldn't the rest of it be tracked in that manner? So I want you to open your ears and listen and look for these nuggets of wonderfulness in the Psalms as we go through the most horrific time in Israel's modern day history, World War II. Okay? But let's look at Psalm 35. And it says here, a Psalm of David, and I want you to read this now, just thinking. We're going to go again. I'm going to read the history for you a little bit, but just think of this as 1935. Just think of it as we go along here. Psalm 35, verse 1. Contend, O Lord, with those who contend with me. Fight against those who fight against me. Take up shield and buckler. Arise and come to my aid. Does that sound like we're approaching World War II? What's actually happening in 1935 is Hitler started pointing out the Jews as the problems for the world. He started marginalizing them. So that's what just think of that as we read here. Psalm 35, verse 3, brandish spear and javelin against those who pursue me. Say to my soul, I am your salvation. They are longing for someone, their God, to save them. May those who seek my life be disgraced and put to shame. May those who plot my ruin be turned back in dismay. Verse 5, may they be like chaff before the wind, with the angel of the Lord driving them away. May their path be dark and slippery, with the angel of the Lord pursuing them. You see how he's talking here about they know what's coming, the forces are coming against them, and they're asking the Lord to make their path, to make them stumble in their path. Verse 7, since they hid their net for me without cause, and without cause dug a pit for me. The Jews weren't doing anything wrong in Germany, nor were they doing anything wrong in if they did something wrong, they tried to be too good at being other people than themselves throughout the dispersion through the nations. You know, they wanted to be the best Germans they could be. They wanted to be better Germans than the Germans were. And the Poles and the Russians, they wanted to be better people in their non-native nations than the people who lived there. Verse 8, may ruin overtake them by surprise. May the net they hid entangle them. May they fall into the pit to their ruin. Then my soul, I'm sorry, I have to tear up when I look at this because this is what they went through. So you're going to have to put up with me. Yeah, I can scream and yell and carry on, but this touches my heart, so you're going to have to put up with that too. I'm sorry. Then my soul will rejoice in the Lord and delight in his salvation. My whole being will exclaim, who is like you, O Lord? You rescue the poor and those too strong for them. From those too strong for them, the poor and needy from those who rob them. And boy, did they need rescuing from someone too strong for them. And they're going to need it again. Because Hitler was an excellent foretype of whom that's coming. Verse 11, ruthless witnesses come forward. They question me on things I know nothing about. You remember how in World War II, in the ramp-up, they started demonizing the Jews? And they were accusing them of things and then questioning them as if they were, and bringing them to, under the law. Using the legal system to persecute these people. By the way, what's happening in this nation now for Christians? What's happening all over the world? You notice how these people are excellent at creating laws and then using the legal system as their, and the banking system, the economics of the world to really lord it over everyone. And that's how they find their own personal freedom, is in their laws and in enforcing of their laws.
Michael,
yes?
remember the Holocaust Museum? We saw the propaganda, the things that they had written.
That's right.
And stories they told their children in Germany and all that stuff.
That's right. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. We went to the Holocaust Museum in Israel when we went to Israel. What a heart-wrencher, but you're right. It's amazing, the systematic. I mean, if you think about it, how much thought, how much deep planning they put into this, the detail. It was amazing. The way they set things up, the machinery, the trains, the slaughterhouses, the gas, everything. I mean, it's amazing, the machine that Satan built. Verse 12, they repay me evil for good and leave my soul forlorn. Yet when they were ill, I put on sackcloth and humbled myself with fasting when my prayers returned to me unanswered. You see what he's saying? Even when the enemy, before even they were their enemy, but when these people among the nations that Israel was left in, they even prayed for them. They even wanted to help them. They were good. They wanted to be the best in those societies. That's what it's saying here. Yet when they were ill, I put on sackcloth and humbled myself with fasting. When my prayers returned to me unanswered, I went about my mourning as though my friend or my brother. What he's saying here is even when God did not answer my prayer for the healing of these people who are against me or are coming against me, I even mourn for them. You see the heart of Israel? Do you see this? I bowed my head in grief as though weeping for my mother. Verse 15, but when I stumbled, they gathered in glee. Attackers gathered against me when I was unaware. They slandered me without ceasing. 1935, 1936. Do you see where I'm going with this? Does this psalm sound like it does map into that? I'm not making this up. Verse 16, like the ungodly, they maliciously mocked. They gnashed their teeth at me. O Lord, how long will you look on? Rescue my life from their ravages, my precious life from these lions. I will give you thanks in the great assembly. Among throngs of people, I will praise you. Let not those gloat over me who are my enemies without cause, without cause. What did they do to them? What did the Jews do to these people? Let not those who hate me without reason maliciously wink their eye. They do not speak peaceably, but devise false accusations, verse 20, against those who live quietly in the land. They gape at me and say, aha, with our own eyes we have seen it. O Lord, have you seen this? Be not silent. Do not be far from me, O Lord. Awake and rise to my defense. Contend for me, my God and Lord. Vindicate me in your righteousness, O Lord, my God. Do not let them gloat over me. Do not let them think, aha, just what we wanted, or say, we have swallowed them up. Verse 26, may all who gloat over my distress be put to shame and confusion. May all who exalt themselves over me be clothed with shame and disgrace. May those who delight in my vindication shout for joy and gladness, and we are of those, aren't we? May they always say, the Lord be exalted, who delights in the well-being of his servants. Verse 28, my tongue will speak of your righteousness and of your praises all day long. If that does not touch your heart, you have no clue of what happened with Israel. Now, you see, this said is the Psalm of David, and I know you, and you've probably read this psalm many times before. You at least glanced over it, and you know, it applied to David in his day. It applied to Israel in their day. But if you look at how these psalms map year by year in the ramp up to World War II, and then when they became a nation in 1948, and you look at that psalm, it is absolutely staggering to me. And I hope you see it that way. So what about Psalm 35? What took place in and around 1935 that impacted the Jewish people that they may cry out? By the way, is it possible? Remember that in the Old Testament days, the Psalms were the Jews' prayer book. Would you say that these are prayers? This is a longing of the heart? And would you probably say that there were many Jews who were born into those concentration camps that knew the Psalms by heart because they weren't allowed to have Bibles anymore? And they probably prayed these psalms on their way to Dachau, on their way on those trains. So what took place? I went to a site called The Teacher's Guide to the Holocaust, and in my notes, should you choose to read them, BibleStudyWeekly.net. You'll never remember everything you learn here, folks. You will not. You will not. You can come here every week and listen. You can come here every week and enjoy what you hear. I hope you do. But just like with the sermons, if you don't study this, if you don't look into it every week, I'm just telling you, you're never going to remember it all. And look, we all do with our time what the value point is for us. And I'm just as up and down like anybody else. So I'm not accusing anybody because I point the finger at myself. I'm just telling you, if you want to really understand these things, you just have to keep looking at them. And that's why I write these notes, and that's why I make them available to you on that website. That's why the audio's there too. Anyway, there's a website. It's called The Teacher's Guide to the Holocaust, and the link is in my notes if you want to go there. So let's read some of the notes of the history that I found there, and you're going to be amazed at what you're going to see. Now, we just read Psalm 35, and you just heard the heart of Israel while she was being falsely accused, while the legal system was being used by Hitler to bring her to the point of execution, and everybody around her agreeing to it. Germany, just prior to World War II, the war officially started. Do you know what year the war actually officially started? Does anybody know? 1939. But the ramp up was quite a number of years before that. So we just looked at what may have happened in 1935. With Adolf Hitler's ascendancy to the chancellorship, the Nazi Party quickly consolidated its power. Hitler managed to maintain a posture of legality throughout the Nazification process. What did I just say? What is our president doing? What are the bankers doing? What are the world system doing? They're more and more, what I said last week, regulations, legal system is being used to consolidate their power. There's nothing new under the sun. Domestically, during the next 6 years, Hitler completely transformed Germany into a police state. What's happening in our country today? That's right. Germany steadily began rearmament of its military in violation of the 1919 Treaty of Versailles. What's happening with our military today? What's Russia doing under Vladimir Putin? Do you know how much they're remilitarizing themselves? What's China doing? Internationally, Hitler engaged in a diplomatic revolution by skillfully negotiating with other European countries and publicly expressing his strong desire for peace. That's what he did. What are countries doing today? What is going to be one of the hallmarks at the later end of the history timeline? When they say peace and safety, what happens? Sudden destruction comes upon them. Do you see a cycle? Anybody know the definition of crazy? All right. Let's take a look at 1933. 1933. Within months of Hitler's appointment as chancellor, the Dachau concentration camp was created. The Nazis began arresting communists. Imagine that, they arrested communists, socialists, and labor leaders. Dachau became a training center for concentration camp guards. Sounds like the FEMA camps today. And later commandants who were taught terror tactics to dehumanize their prisoners. Parliamentary democracy ended with the Reichstag passage of the Enabling Act, which allowed the government to issue laws without the Reichstag. Sounds like executive orders.
The last 3D sign.
Yeah. You see, this is what... All right, it's still amazing to me how the same things happen over and over again, and we, not us, but I mean, most people will follow like sheep. And that's what they told the Jews. Give us your clothes, we'll keep them for you. We just want to shower you down to make sure that there's no disease so we can delouse you, right? And then they put them into the gas chambers. They were lied to all the way up until the time they were slaughtered, just like sheep, just like people in this country. Most people are numb, and around the world.
Mike, keep in mind, don't get on the bus. Really, if there was they said if they came on the news and said there's been an accident in Seabrook, we're sending buses to get you out of the area. Don't get on the bus.
Really? Yeah. Well, you heard that also reminds me of something else they're starting. I don't know if they're doing it yet. I've heard maybe they've tested it, but they're getting to the point. I've heard, and you may have heard this, that they're going to have checkpoints at some point where you're going to have to take a forced immunization for the good of everybody else.
Yeah, I've been reading it. I heard the first one's going to be in October.
Oh, is that soon?
YouTube video of a woman that was in the Army Reserves, and she got caught up about a month ago in California, and she was like, "What are we doing?" And she was shaking on the video, saying, "This is happening to the American people." She said, "This is probably going to be the last time you'll see."
Oh, I think I saw that video. She's a Christian, I think, in the armed
She said
services.
they're going to have 2 checkpoints. They're going to put on bracelets.
A bracelet that says you were
get off.
right.
They're good underwater, and it says that
That's
you've
right.
taken the H1N1 shot.
Oh, the flu, bird flu. It was bird flu, swine flu? Swine flu? Isn't that interesting? Never let a good crisis go to waste, and if there is no crisis, make one up.
That's what Rahm Emanuel said, isn't it?
That's right. Rahm Emanuel said that before he went back to the Chicago machine. It's coming, folks. It's coming.
Both setup points were before the election.
Yep, it may be. But the thing is what are they preparing for? Remember, the winter months is when the flu season arrives.
Right.
And remember the big deal they made of the bird flu a few years ago? That's why I got confused. And they had, wasn't it bird flu? That they set up all, they have, remember this vaccine started running out, they couldn't make, is that swine flu? Okay, sorry. Okay, swine flu. That was in your freshman year? Okay. So, but anyway, swine flu. But the point is that you see how they're desensitizing people to this? And people will do it because you're either going to take that shot, get your little bracelet, and be on your way, or they're going to bust you out. Now, people don't want their lives disrupted. They got to catch, their TV shows. Anyway, thank you. So we're still in 1933. Nazi anti-Semitic legislation and propaganda against non-Aryans was a thinly disguised attack against anyone who had Jewish parents or grandparents. Jews felt increasingly isolated from the rest of German society. In a parallel move from April to October of that year, the regime passed civil laws that barred Jews from holding positions in the civil service, in legal and medical professions, and in teaching and university positions. The Nazis encouraged boycotts of Jewish-owned shops and businesses and began book burnings of writings by Jews and by others non-approved by the Reich. 1934. The SA had been instrumental in Hitler's rise to power. In early 1934, there were 2.5 million SA men compared with 100,000 men in the regular army. Can you believe that? 2.5 million in the SA compared to only 100,000 in Germany's regular army. Hitler knew that the regular army opposed the SA becoming its core. Fearing the power of the regular army to force him from office, Hitler curried their favor by attacking the leadership of the SA in, quote, the night of the long knives, unquote. Hitler arrested Ernst Röhm and scores of other SA leaders and had them shot by the SS, which now rose in importance. I guess that's a good way of rising yourself to importance, just kill the competition. On August 2nd, 1934, President Hindenburg died. Hitler combined the offices of Reich Chancellor and President, declaring himself Führer, and Reich Chancellor, or the Reichsführer, the leader of the country. 1935, now which psalm did we just read? 35th Psalm. Hitler announced the Nuremberg laws in 1935. These laws stripped Jews of their civil rights as German citizens and separated them from Germans legally, socially, and politically. Did we just read some of that about in Psalm 35? You remember we just read that they are taking me, they are accusing me and with no cause, right? They are marginalizing me. Did you remember we just read that? Jews were also defined as a separate race under the law for the protection of German blood and honor. That was a law. The law for the protection of German blood and honor. Being Jewish was now determined by ancestry. Thus, the Germans used race, not religious beliefs or practices, to define the Jewish people. This was just anti-Semitism down to the DNA. That's all it was now. The law forbade marriages or sexual relations between Jews and Germans. Hitler warned darkly that if this law did not resolve the problem, he would turn to the Nazi Party for a final solution. More than 120 laws, decrees, and ordinances were enacted after the Nuremberg laws and before the outbreak of World War II, further eroding of the rights of German Jews. Many thousands of Germans who had not previously considered themselves Jews had found themselves defined as non-Aryan. 1936. In 1936, Berlin hosted the Olympics. Hitler viewed this as a perfect opportunity to promote a favorable image of Nazism to the world. Monumental stadiums and other Olympic facilities were constructed as Nazi showpieces. Leni Riefenstahl was commissioned to create a film, Olympia, for the purpose of Nazi propaganda. Some have called her previous film in 1935, Triumph of the Will, one of the great propaganda pieces of the century. In it, she portrayed Hitler as a god. International political unrest preceded the Games. It was questioned whether the Nazi regime could really accept the terms of the Olympic Charter of participation unrestricted by class, by creed, or by race. He's kind of questioning. He didn't really want to do that. There were calls for a U.S. boycott of the Games. The Nazis guaranteed that they would allow German Jews to participate, so the boycott did not occur. Hey, just fix it a little. They'll come. Just fix it. Just say we love the Jews. Say anything you want. Doesn't matter whether you lie. While two Germans with some Jewish ancestry were invited to be on the German Olympic team, the German Jewish athlete Gretel Bergmann, one of the world's most accomplished high jumpers, was not. Imagine that. One of the world's most accomplished high jumpers was not allowed to be on that team simply because she was a Jew. After reviewing this, I want to take a moment, and I didn't put it in my notes because I wasn't originally going to look at it, but let's take a look. Psalm 36. Just to see if what we just read now. You remember what we just read. Let's see if any of this maps in. I don't want to spend too much time on it. Psalm 36 through 43. We just want to touch upon a couple of them here. Psalm 36, verse 1. The transgression of the wicked saith within my heart that there is no fear of God before his eyes. For he flatters himself in his own eyes. Sounds like the building of the Reichstag, doesn't it, under Hitler? He flatters himself in his own eyes until his iniquity be found to be hateful. The words of his mouth are iniquity and deceit. Didn't we just read a lot about how they use deceit? I mean, do you see how this works together here? He has left off to be wise and to do good. Now I'm reading from, this is King James Version. 4, he devises mischief upon his bed. He sets himself in a way that is not good. He does not abhor evil. Let's move to Psalm 37. Fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be you envious against the workers of iniquity, for they shall soon be cut down like the grass and wither as the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good, so you shall dwell in the land, and verily you shall be fed. This is a lead up to say that in about 9 years from now, or 10 years, whatever, you will be back in that land. And there's more. I don't even want to get into all of it all, but you see, what I'd like you to do is read the Psalms for yourselves, and if you get my notes, all of this history is in my notes. And I think you personally should sit down and prayerfully do a comparison of the Psalms for those years and read and see how closely they map. Okay, let's move on. Let's see if the Psalms predict more detail, this time about the end of World War II and the liberation of the Jews by the Allied forces. Remember, the war actually started officially in 1939, so I read you the ramp up to the point of Hitler coming to power, marginalizing the Jews, taking on the government, having his own militia. It sounds like this country, doesn't it? I hate saying that, but it's true. Actually, I love saying it because it's true, because we know where it's going. We see it all the time here. We see it all the time here. 1944. Those who attempted to rescue Jews and others from the Nazi death sentence did so at great risk for their own safety. Anyone found harboring a Jew, for example, was shot or publicly hanged as a warning to others. Sharing scarce resources with those in hiding was an additional sacrifice on the part of a rescuer. Despite the risks, thousands followed the dictates of conscience. In Denmark, 7,220 of its 8,000 Jews were saved by a citizenry who hid them, then ferried them to the safety of neutral Sweden. Almost all of 8,000 Jews were saved in Denmark. Better known rescuers include Raoul Wallenberg, the Swedish diplomat who led the effort that saved 100,000 Hungarian Jews in 1944. Another rescuer, and this one everybody knows, Oskar Schindler, saved over 1,000 Polish Jews from their deaths. Huguenot pastor André Tromé led the rescue effort in La Chambon-sur-Léon, France, a small town in France. It's not Remoulac, which, if you'd ever saw the old Saturday Night Live, you're probably not going to think that's funny, but she did, which hid and protected 5,000 Jews. Over 13,000 men and women who risked their lives to rescue Jews have been honored as righteous Gentiles at the Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, which is the Holocaust museum we went to. Thousands more remain unrecognized. So you see how God had an underswelling of people ready to save a remnant and get those people ready to go back to Israel when everything finally finalized in 1948 it became a nation. That was 1944. 1945. As Allied troops entered Nazi-occupied territories, the final rescue and liberation transpired. Allied troops who stumbled upon the camps were shocked at what they found. large ditches filled with bodies, rooms of babies' shoes, and gas chambers with fingernail marks on the walls, all testified to Nazi brutality. General Eisenhower insisted on photographing and documenting the horror so that future generations would not ignore history and repeat its mistakes. How well is that working? Most people have no clue. And then you have people like Ahmadinejad, who says there was no Holocaust. And I told you this. Mahmoud Abbas, who was the follow-on for Arafat, his thesis was, he wrote a thesis in college in the 70s about proving his thesis that the Holocaust never happened. That was his thesis. That was his college thesis. He also forced villagers neighboring the death and concentration camps to view what had occurred in their own backyards. General Eisenhower did this to make the people in the surrounding areas see this is what has happened. And Germany has been very repentant up until this very day. So, let's read Psalms 44 and 45. How's that? Shall we? Let's. Just remember what I just read you, okay? So we saw the ramp up to World War II. We saw that during the hotter spots of the beginning of World War II and into the early 40s, we saw many, many people who were called the righteous Gentiles underground helping Jews across the world, right? But especially in these hotspots areas like Schindler and like the others we talked about, there were many who God enabled and directed to save these people. And this was the remnant moving forward, plus the Allied forces who wrapped this thing up. This was the remnant who now had their land waiting for them at the right time, in 1948.
Michael,
Yes.
Psalm 43, 1
Mm-hmm.
says, "Vindicate me, O God, and plead my case against an ungodly nation, and deliver me from the deceitful and unjust man."
Thank you. 1944, or Psalm 44, verse 1. "We have heard with our ears, O God, our fathers have told us what you did in their days, in days long ago. With your hand you drove out the nations and planted our fathers. You crushed the peoples and made our fathers flourish. It was not by their sword that they won the land, nor did their arm bring them victory. It was your right hand, your arm, and the light of your face, for you love them." You see what they're saying here in 1944? They're not going to win by their own arm, and God is preparing them and going to give them a land. It says verse 4, "You are my king and my God who decrees victories for Jacob." Right at the end of the world, we see how this is moving here. "Through you we push back our enemies. Through your name we trample our foes." Verse 6, "I do not trust in my bow. My sword does not bring me victory, but you give us victory over our enemies. You put our adversaries to shame. In God we make our boast all day long, and we will praise your name forever. Selah," which means basically pause and calmly think of that. Verse 9, "But now you have rejected and humbled us. You no longer go out with our armies. You made us retreat before the enemy. Our adversaries have plundered us. You gave us up to be devoured like sheep and have scattered us among the nations. You sold your people for a pittance, gaining nothing from their sale. You have made us a reproach to our neighbors, the scorn and derision of those around us. You have made us a byword among the nations. The people shake their heads at us. My disgrace is before me all day long, and my face is covered with shame at the taunts of those who reproach me and revile me because of the enemy who is bent on revenge. All this happened to us, though we had not forgotten you or been false to your covenant. Our hearts had not turned back, our feet had not strayed from your path, but you crushed us and made us a haunt for jackals." By the way, that's the quote. That's the quote that Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain, used when he went to Jerusalem in the 1800s. He says it was a haunt for jackals. That's what he said. "You have made us a haunt for jackals and covered us over with deep darkness. If we had forgotten the name of our God or spread out our hands to a foreign God, would not God have discovered it, since he knows the secrets of the heart?" Verse 22, "Yet for your sake we face death all day long. We are considered as sheep to be slaughtered. Awake, O Lord, why do you sleep? Rouse yourself. Do not reject us forever." There are rumors that the Jews have been rejected forever. And unfortunately, there are Christians who believe that. It's all part of the propaganda machine. Educate yourselves. That's what you're here for, and I'm glad. But I mean, there are so many Christians who have not a clue. And nowadays, it doesn't take much to rile me up when I don't see the truth. But nowadays, when I talk to Christians, and they have no clue, above Jesus Christ and Him sacrificed, I'm sorry, I get angry. Not now, not with everything we have available to us to learn. Verse 24. Why do you hide your face and forget our misery and oppression? We are brought down to the dust, our bodies cling to the ground. Rise up and help us. Redeem us because of your unfailing love. Isn't that what started happening? Psalm 45, 1945. My heart is stirred by a noble theme. As I recite my verses for the King, my tongue is the pen of a skillful writer. You are the most excellent of men, and your lips have been anointed with grace, since God has blessed you forever. Gird your sword upon your side, O mighty one. Clothe yourself with splendor and majesty. In your majesty ride forth victoriously in behalf of the truth, humility, and righteousness. Let your right hand display awesome deeds. Let your sharp arrows pierce the heart of the king's enemies. Let the nations fall beneath your feet. Do you smell victory here out of despair? Do you smell that in this? Your throne, O God, will last forever and ever. A scepter of justice will be the scepter of your kingdom. You love righteousness and hate wickedness. Therefore, God, your God, has set you above your companions by anointing you with the oil of joy. All your robes are fragrant with myrrh and aloes and cassia. From palaces adorned with ivory, the music of the strings make you glad. Daughters of kings are among your honored women. At your right hand is the royal bride in gold of Ophir. Listen, O daughter, consider and give ear. Forget your people and your father's house. The king is enthralled with your beauty. Honor him, for he is your Lord. This is talking about the restoration of Israel. God has not stopped loving her. You ever read in some other passages in Scripture where he says, I chose you when you were a babe, an infant, lying in your own blood. You had just been born, and you had been rejected and thrown in the road, and I picked you up and I cleaned you. Anybody ever hear of that? And I took you with me, and I grew you up. And then he says, you became beautiful. And your womanly parts were beautifully formed, and you became beautiful. And I loved you. And I was preparing you for marriage. Does that sound familiar? And then you rejected me and played the harlot. Does that sound familiar? But what does he say at the end of all that? There is still restoration. There is still restoration. And he still counts her as beautiful. Verse 12 of Psalm 45. The daughter of Tyre will come with a gift. Men of wealth will seek your favor. Now, what is this talking about? This is bridging. This is bridging. Remember, this is now bridging the gap. It's talking about Israel having been restored as a nation. And let's face it, even though the world still hates her, as a nation, she's a net exporter of fruits and vegetables to Europe, right? She's now going to be an exporter of gas and oil, which is, I think, they found more, by the way. And that's going to be the hook in Russia's jaw. That's what's going to happen. I fully believe it. But that's another point. But now, every time, I hope you've seen this, every time we get into these joyful psalms that talks about the restoration of Israel around that time, and we saw it in Isaiah 66, it immediately dovetails into the tribulation and thereafter. You see how that's why I'm trying to, there are people who do not understand that Israel is the marker of prophecy. And you look at how these Psalms are wrote, you look at Isaiah 66, you look at the book of Ezekiel, you look at any of these things, and tell me that you don't see that. It almost always bridges the former with the latter result. This is it. This is what we're talking about here. Let's move on here. Verse 13, all glorious is the princess within her chamber. Her gown is interwoven with gold. In embroidered garments she is led to the king. Her virgin companions follow her and are brought to you. They are led in with joy and gladness. They enter the palace of the king. Verse 16, your sons will take the place of whom? Your fathers You will make them what? Princes throughout what? The land. Did you say this is preparing them to come back into Israel in 1948? I'd say it is. Finally, God grants them the capstone in 1967. Remember the Six-Day War. At least you've heard of it. Most of you are too young to remember it. I'm even too young to remember. I was 10 years old in 67. I was six what? I was a kid. I didn't care about Six-Day nothing. I don't remember even hearing about it. But it happened. So let's wrap up with this thought here. Let's move to Psalm 67. Now, you know what happened in 1967 when they got invaded again, right? In 1956, there was the Suez War, right? And in 1973, there was the Yom Kippur War, which they almost got destroyed. They almost were going to unleash nuclear weapons. I told you the history of that one. It was by the skin of our teeth, of somebody's teeth, that we didn't have a nuclear war in 1973 because Israel was going to really just blow the place up. That's how close they came. And Kissinger and Nixon and all of them told them not to do it, and they didn't do it. And then came the Intifada, and all the Intifadas since the year 2000, okay? Now we're ramping up toward the final solution again with Iran blowing them out of the water. But in 1967, and yet another time they got invaded, what happened? Well, something they didn't anticipate. They won back Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. So let's read Psalm 67 and see where that goes. May God be gracious to us and bless us and make his face shine upon us, that your ways may be known on the earth, your salvation among the nations. May the people praise you, O God. May all the peoples praise you. May the nations be glad and sing for joy, for you rule the peoples justly and guide the nations of the earth. When is that going to happen? And who is going to be the head of the nations in the millennium? And where is Jesus going to rule from? And what did they capture back in 1967 and still have to this day? Even though they were foolish enough within 24 hours or so to give back the Temple Mount administratively to the Arabs in the Waqf. But they still own it. They're just scared like they always are. But God is not going to let this escape their hands again. Verse 5. May the peoples praise you, O God. May all the people, all, who are the kings of the earth going to worship during the millennium? And if they don't, they will be denied rain and so forth, because there will be people who do not want to come up and do the things that Jesus wants them to do. But they will be cognizant of who the king of Israel is. And by the way, the millennium is the fulfillment of what? What's the millennium the fulfillment of? Come on, this side of the room. What is the millennium the fulfillment of? Want to give you some more hints? They thought Jesus came to do this when he first came. The kingdom. The kingdom is not now. The kingdom hasn't happened before. It's not the church's job to bring in the kingdom. The kingdom is the millennium where Jesus takes the throne of David. The Davidic covenant is fulfilled, and he rules from where? On the temple what? From his fourth temple, which he will build after the tribulation temple is finished. That's the Ezekiel temple I told you about that the Jews can't quite figure out because architecturally it is very different. There is no outer court of the Gentiles, and there's other things going on that they can't figure out. Verse 5, may the peoples praise you, O God. May all the peoples praise you. Then the land will yield its harvest, and God, our God, will bless us. God will bless us. And all the ends of the earth will fear him. You see the kickoff that 1967 started when they got back that Temple Mount? Do you see it here? I do. Psalm what? 1967. I hope that wraps it up for you. There are 6 points which I'm not going to read now. It's a closing summary in my notes about what we studied in the Psalms, and I hope this has been profitable to you from a different angle which you may or may not have ever thought about before. I want you to, just like the book of Psalms is a book of heart, I want you to fall in love with the book of Psalms. And not just as a prayer book for yourselves. That's fine. Remember, I'm not belittling any of this. Not as a cry book, and when you have personal issues and those Psalms, pray for you sometimes. When you can't find the words, sometimes the Psalms will find them for you and help your spirit groan. Because the Holy Spirit, remember, he will groan for you when you can't. That's all great. I just wanted to add this value to you, that the Psalms show the heart of God himself. It shows the heart of Israel. It shows God's heart toward Israel. It shows you the historical reference of things that actually happened on something that, just like Jesus' birth, death, and resurrection, at just the right time in history, Israel came back to her land. We saw how many prophecies in Scripture about that. At just the right time. And that kicks off the countdown toward the tribulation and the millennium. And we just saw all of that here. So be blessed with what you know about the Psalms. Our God has it all under control, and He's already shown it to you here. Amen. Have a blessed week. No, there's no class next week. I'm heading down to New York early, so we'll see how blessed that is. But enjoy, and we will start off, I think, in the book of Proverbs. We're going to start the week after next in the 3 books that Solomon wrote when he was young, when he was middle-aged, and then when he was old. So we're not necessarily in that order, but we'll study them. All right, have a wonderful 2 weeks, everybody.